Witches, rise up and return to your power. Witches, rise up. Now is the hour. Witches, rise up and step on to your throne. Witches, rise up. It's time to come home. Welcome to Healing the Witch Wound Global Online Summit, walking the bridge home to our secret sovereign truth. This summit is calling forth an individual and global remembering, for we are being initiated to heal the witch woundings flowing through our bloodlines, creating space for our magnificence to shine. So witches, rise up. It's time to come home. And I'm your host, Emer Stassen, and I'm really delighted to welcome today's expert speaker, Kimberly Jones. Hi, Kimberly.
Hello, lovely. Oh, so amazing to be here with you and everyone that's joining the summit. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely wonderful. And we connected quite synchronistically recently on Instagram.
Yes.
Really amazing.
It has been amazing.
Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself to people, and then we can take it from there?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kimberly Jones. I'm a sacred feminine activist, a mystic, a soul midwife. I've been working with awakening women for about 20 years, and I specialise in healing the witch wound. And I come from a long line of witchy women, and these times have really called me to step up, as it has for many of us. So seeing your summit and the name of the summit, it was a real kick up the bum from the universe. I've been in a big season of rest with health issues and health challenges, and regrouping and really reconnecting with the feminine and the feminine way of being. And as I emerge out of that deep space of rest, I realized that that's my new calling, or the next phase of my calling is to help other women really drop into the feminine, heal those feminine wounds, heal the witch wound, embody the goddess, the return of the goddess.
Yeah.
For everybody, for all of us, men and women. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. Well, thank you for hearing the call, and I'm so glad that we can connect in this way. And a lot of your work is around the feminine, which is so needed just now, and healing the witch woundings of these times. Where would you like to start with that?
I know, gosh. Well, I mean, I'm sure many of your speakers have expressed it so eloquently as well, and that this time that we're in, and I feel deeply, colleagues and friends that I've worked with recently have reflected this too, that we are in that era of the end of patriarchy and the falling and the crumbling of patriarchy and the healing of the feminine wounds. And gosh, there's so much to it. There's so much to it, but essentially I'm feeling just really led to teach and demonstrate a new yet ancient way for women to be, and to be together and to be in the world. And a lot of it is about doing much less and about our energy and our presence with each other, and being willing to show up and share and look at the shadow and look at all of the things that have kept us from each other and separate from each other. You know, the comparison and the competition and the sister wound. I know many of you have touched on the sister wound, and all of those reasons why women competed with each other to survive, to get the man, to not die. And then obviously going back to witch trials and the burning times, a very direct reason to compete and separate from each other. So there's a massive coming together. I think it's about coming together, healing together, and doing it actually in a space of unconditional love and non-judgment. And the energy field that we create when we gather in that space is so powerful. There's almost nothing to be done, nothing to be fixed, no homework to do, no curriculum, no more pushing, no more rushing, no more driving, no more striving. And as I'm saying that, I'm very aware that there's a privilege in that. There's a inherent privilege and an unconscious bias in myself as a white Western, middle-aged, middle-class woman, that I feel I can immerse in that surrendering space of flowing and allowing and beingness. Don't have quite so much of that trauma that pushes me to need to hustle just to get by, So there's a lot rising, isn't there? There's a lot rising in consciousness now, and a lot being asked of us, actually.
Yeah.
And I know for me, it's just been get out of your own way, Kimberly. And it's not easy, is it? The fears of being seen, the fears of showing up, even on a summit, on video, on Zoom, the throat stuff, it all comes up. It's all coming up. I'm really hot here. I usually go red. Oh, there you go. Yeah, throat chakra stuff. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. But the actual work for me started, actually, I dug something out for you. Now, where have I put them? Let's see if I can find them. But the work started for me, actually, when I was doing, if I can't find them, it's fine. But the work started for me doing energy scans for women in a clinic. They were coming for Reiki. I started off doing Reiki in a complementary therapy clinic run by a medical doctor in Totnes in Devon. And very forward thinking to have me in there, I think. But so I started off doing Reiki with women, and the chakras in the palms of your hands, the energy was flowing through, delivering lovely energy, sharing lovely energy with these women as they were resting on the treatment bed. And I was feeling that lovely priestess memory of the temple spaces. And then something happened with my hands. It's like the chakras in the palms of my hands sort of turned into little kind of spinning toroidal donut things, energy fields. And so I started reading the energy of the women's body.
Wow.
As I was transmitting the energy. So I did thousands of these. I've done something like 20,000 hours of one-to-one sessions with these incredible women. And I started to see colours. I'm a synesthete, so I was translating all this information that was coming out of their bodies as colours. So what can I do? I was getting all this information about their past lives, about witch trials, about memories and flashbacks. They were having memories and flashbacks and yawning and crying, and a couple of women really felt they were going to vomit. Their bodies were reacting so strongly. So what I started to do was map the energies that I was seeing in these women's bodies of the witch wound and how it manifested in the body. I thought, I've got to work out a way to do this. So I used to take my laptop into sessions, use a piece of software had an outline of a human form on the screen, backwards and forwards to the woman, to the computer, to the woman, to the computer, mapping all these colours and all this information that their body didn't know really what I was doing at the time, and realising that their body was releasing the witch wound in that space together. And I would say 95, I had a quick look earlier and looked at all my stats, and I would say about 95% of the women that came to me and had scans demonstrated had witch wound past life flashbacks on the table with me, and demonstrated key areas of the body where the witch wound was held. And of course, you can guess where the main one was. It was around here. And it was usually blue or red, a dark blue or a dark red, depending on where they were at on their journey of healing the witch wound. So if I saw a very dark blue, they would usually feel a constriction, a tightness, and a fear and a coldness. And so the wound was very buried, very suppressed. If they'd already done a bit of work, or they'd tapped into that fire, that heat, that rage, and that had started to move, they would still have this energy patterning around the neck and around the throat, but it was red. It was starting to heal. It was starting to release. And so then over the years, in dialogue with my clients, you start to realize which practices and which approaches and work to transform that energy the most efficiently. And so that's when a sort of a toolkit gathers and starts to build. But I just want to say, for me, it wasn't about being prescriptive and going in and using the same, approaches with every woman any more than it is now, even though I don't do the scans in person, I do them more remotely. in more of a sort of a channeling, distant sort of a way. It was very much about listening to their body, and their wisdom would come as soon as I started tending and just showering the throat space with love and different healing energies and using different techniques. Their voice would return, and then they would know what needed to happen. They knew what needed to be said. They knew what the next steps were and how to release it. And very often there was just a lot of emotion, a lot of tears. There might have been weeks of processing grief, rage, flashbacks, similar to some experiences that you had, and memories, and it was full on. And I only managed to do it for a few years, as you can imagine, because it really was triggering for me. I needed to tend to my own witch wound, as it was coming up. So that's kind of where it's not really where it began, but it's where the work began, because I come from a long line of witchy women and clairvoyants and mediums, and we had many, many conversations over the years. They're all gone now, but many conversations over the years about this. And yeah, there's so much that I want to share, but yeah, it's been a powerful journey. Yeah.
That's so incredible. And just the image of mapping, being able to map out the body with your hands and seeing the colors and the blues and the reds. And of course, we're recording this, or the summit has started and we're recording this. So you may have seen the live talk I did. And when I was doing my live talk around Witches Rise Up, my throat went. And that's what I find. The more I step out, the more I speak, what happens is that, words bubble up and, it turns into poetry or story.
Yeah.
And then when I speak that, then it's like, it's like it has to get through this, like, so very much so I feel this wounding in my throat. And that's where I'm working. And the more I speak, the more, I guess, the less control that wounding has, and the more I can release that,
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hear it in your voice, the intonation of your voice, and I'm really aware of my constriction because I've only recently started stepping out and speaking again. And so it's practicing, isn't it? And the more we do it, the more it shifts and brings things up for us to tend to, lovingly tend to. But I mean, you could just read your poetry you could read the telephone book and your voice would be doing the work, because I can feel it in the vibration of your voice, the healing, the women, the witches, the ancestry, what you're delivering. It's wonderful what you're creating with the summit and the information that you're sharing and the incredible women that you're gathering. But just your voice, you carry the healing in you just by being you.
Wow.
The frequency of your voice when you're speaking to these women and all the thousands of women that will be watching the videos, and they will be receiving healing through your voice.
Wow.
And really, you can feel it. I mean, it vibrates through my whole body when you speak.
Really? I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Well, sound healing, of course, one of the ancient and new future technologies of healing, sound healing and frequency and vibration and using the voice. And
wow.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was one of your roles in temple, going back and back.
Yeah.
Sound, vocalizers, singers, healers, sound healers, singing healers. Yeah.
I have a feeling that's been part of it. I've had, I love to go for sessions with psychic healers and people like yourself. I've been told that many a time, many lifetimes, of being that speaker or that healer or that religious person, and holding that wounding of probably betrayal, I think that's a big one of speaking out and the impact of what speaking out has had as well. And I can definitely resonate with that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just nipped off to grab, I did find a couple of the scans for you. And bearing in mind there are thousands of these, and I just grabbed the 2 that I was led to. And I've obviously concealed the client names for confidentiality. And these are actually some of my earlier scans, so they're quite basic. The later ones are very complicated, but I just thought I would try and show you.
Wow.
And it's just rough, really, because you can see obviously the energy around the throat there.
Yeah.
Part of the session as well was writing copious notes and information that the body was telling me, or her soul, her energy body was telling me. So there's another one where I was just sort of scribbling, and you can see there's a huge jet of energy actually leaking out of her throat chakra because it was so wounded.
Wow.
And she had holes in her aura as a result. And she came to me because she was having panic attacks and she couldn't leave her home. And her issue was about confidence and speaking her truth and being seen and being visible. And so, yeah, I suppose it didn't really surprise me that she had this huge jet of, and actually it was rage. It was rage at all the ways that her boundaries had been breached and all the wounds, you know. And I'm sharing it. I think I'm sharing it because it informs where I'm at now and where the wider healing of the feminine wounds are perhaps heading. Because like I said, I don't do those scans like that anymore. But the same faculty in me, or the same gift from my lineage that allowed me to do that work, now allows me to scan the collective energy field, like the planetary energy field, or particular groups, circles, our circle, our group, the women called to this work. And so I feel like I'm constantly dancing with all of those different energies that are going on. And so I just feel so grateful to be here at this time with that openness to witness what's happening and hopefully help as many women as possible navigate this. Women and those who identify as women, because I work with a huge range of beings. But it tends to be mainly women that find their way to my work in healing the feminine wounds and being ready for this next phase that we're moving into. And I just firmly believe that we're playing a role of midwives of the new world, and we're guardians of the threshold, and that transformation out of the 2,000-3,000 years of patriarchy into the next, the golden age or the new era or whatever we want to call it. And I think it's ancient wisdom, but from the future, or both coming in now.
Wow.
And you're doing such an important and beautiful job of gathering the women around the yes, there's a lot of information and history and herstory, and but I think it's the energy that you're bringing in, and the energy that the women are bringing in, even in, like you said, even just in speaking and showing up. Well, we could all be speaking a foreign language and nobody understand what any of us is saying, and we're still, you're still doing an amazing piece of work. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. That's the only word that just keeps coming in. It is an amazing thing you're doing, and an amazing time to be alive.
Yeah,
absolutely. It might not look like it, but it is.
Yeah. Yes. And the gifts that you're bringing as well, being able to scan the globe and the cosmos and people. And then I wonder, when you scan this and you feel the energy and see the colors or the auras, and then what happens once you've identified that?
I communicate it. Yeah, there's something that happens in the witnessing of it, and it's the same, I think, for anyone who's intuitive. There's something about witnessing something and something being seen, that there's a piece of work that something happens, then it's changed, you are changed, especially when you're seeing something so big and something so powerful. I'm changed anytime I engage with it, but it just comes in, like it does for many people, it just comes in as a knowing. Sometimes there's imagery, but it comes in as a knowing. It comes in like it does for you when you're intuiting and speaking and writing poetry. It comes in on that same lovely flow that you feel come right through you and through your heart and through your body. But it's information about, it's like big picture information. So that's how it shows up. And over the years, it's been about staying grounded, staying in my body to be able to receive it. Because this work, actually, we need to be in good shape to do it. We need to be healthy energetically, and doing the work and taking care of ourselves is a priority to do this, to be conduits, to be midwives, to be the mothers of this work and this next chapter. That's what I'm realizing anyway. That's been my personal journey, that it's not selfish, it's selfhood, it's self-care, it's self-love. And I need to be a healthy container for, whatever the divine, whatever the sacred feminine wants to fill me with in service of others.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that selfhood as well. It's really nice.
Yeah. That's core to my work. My one-to-one work with women, Art of Selfhood, is like the core of it, really. Becoming ready to heal those feminine wounds. Yeah.
I guess I've got a question. In a way, it feels like jumping ahead, but I'll ask it anyway. And it's never a linear conversation anyway.
No.
What was the question? Yeah, well, in your many years, like your 20 years plus of doing this work, the lineage that you come from, is it possible? Can we heal these woundings that we have, that we hold?
Good question.
Are we ever going to heal them all?
Well, I know that's a great question to ask, and it makes sense. I mean, it's the question that's on the surface, isn't it? It's the question, but when we're talking about this topic. But for me, I think I've realized, and I've come to realize, because I've embodied the journey and had, fairly serious health issues as a result, I would say, of the feminine wounds and the witch wound, quite directly, that I've realized it's an ongoing isness, it's an ongoing beingness. And it's not that there's something in me that's bad and wrong and needs to be gotten rid of or changed or fixed. It's that the presence of the wounding is what is leading so many people back to their power. The presence of the wounding, or the presence of, just like anyone's personal journey, what you choose to do with your wounding is up to you. It can make you bitter, it can make you angry, it can make you shut down, it can make you sick. And none of those things are invalid or worse, but they're all part of our individual souls' growth, healing, choices, opportunity. And I think the last couple of years, what I've realized is that this feminine wound, the feminine wounding, the witch wound, it's not just some new age trend that people, a bandwagon that people are jumping on, is it? We're talking about needing to be trauma aware when we're touching into these core collective, cultural, ancestral past life woundings. And so that's where I've been placing my focus for the last 2 or 3 years, is, learning and training, understanding complex trauma and cultural trauma and ancestral trauma, and that it's not my place to just fling a load of tools at someone and say, look, here, go and, heal that wound and all will be well. It's as much my place, and I'm feeling the call now to create more circle space for women to gather and just be and feel and create a safe place to be and feel and be present with, let's say, the witch wound. To be in a safe space that's held and trauma aware is so incredibly important. Because so many women are walking around in the world with really dysregulated nervous systems, utterly exhausted, And I'd go as far as to say, you know, that we're not designed for the world that we've created. And the last 2,000 or 3,000 years has, perhaps the way the world has developed, has been more in favor of a masculine energy or even a male nervous system than a feminine energy or a female nervous system. So, you know, there's a reason why work to do with self-care and self-compassion and slowing down and is so popular now, because we recognize it's not working how it's been. It's not working. And the women are leading the way in saying, we need to slow down. We're exhausted. We're burning out. We're not less than just because it doesn't work for us to work in that way or work in that way, that driving and striving, profiting and productivity and the hustle and the bustle and all the stressing and all of that energy. So many of us, and me personally and friends and clients, we've been beating ourselves up for so long thinking that there's something wrong with us because we can't keep up. Until we realized what we were trying to keep up with was the problem. But I've had to go through 2 or 3 quite major crash and burns to realize that, because each time I would crash, burn, rest, grow a bit, learn a bit, heal a bit. And then the first time I just tried to go straight back into the corporate world again, thinking, oh, I just need to get back to normal and it'll all be fine. So my soul said, nope. She didn't hear it the first time. We're going to have to say it again. So another crash and burn, you know. So I suppose what I'm sharing is, who knows if the wounds will heal? Maybe they're not supposed to. Maybe the wounds somehow turn into something else. They turn into a self-acceptance, an ease and a grace and an acceptance of being a flawed, imperfectly perfect human, and that these woundings are just part of the collective human body and the much bigger picture of the evolution of human consciousness, and a journey that a burnout that we've been through to learn a new way of being, or an ancient way of being, a natural way of being, let's say. And so in order to return to that, the stuff that has been perhaps doing the damage and that is actually the problem needs to fall and crumble and dissolve and stop and change. And it is, and it will. And then we won't perhaps feel quite so wounded anymore. You know, there'll be a forgiveness, perhaps there'll be a healing, there'll be a recognition of what's happened. Individual and collective processes of self-forgiveness, of masculine and feminine union within ourselves, healing the masculine wounds, the feminine wounds, forgiving each other, accepting each other, working together. And at the moment we're in that phase of, I'm really hurt and wounded because you did that wrong. And that's a really important, you know, it's an essential part of the making wrong. And then we'll come out, obviously, move out of victimhood, reclaim our power, acknowledging the wound, acknowledging what happened, our own personal journeys of examining responsibility and, like I said, issues of forgiveness and what do we need to say? What do we need to change? What can we change in our own lives, in our own relationships, in the way that we show up for work? What are we willing to accept in the world? I mean, the witches were always the activists, the midwives and the activists. And right now we're seeing people who are trying to express truth and opinion being censored left, right and centre. It's another witch trial, if you like, you know.
Yeah.
So I realise I'm speaking around it, like you said, circular feminine conversation rather than linear. And I'm really just sharing what wants to come through, like you do so beautifully. But something that's coming in that I really wanted to share, I don't know how it fits in, doesn't matter, I'm going to say it. So it's just the importance of, or the impact of suppressing our intuitive gifts. And in cultures where the feminine is still very much honoured and indigenous spirituality is still very near the surface, there's an awareness that repressed mediumicity causes illness. When we suppress our channel, close our channel, suppress our intuition or the culture or the church or our partner or whatever, society shuts down intuition in particular. And it applies to sexuality and our power and our voice and everything else. But intuition in particular quite significantly contributes to mental illness. And that's something that is really important to me. And I've really been so honoured to work closely with the Spiritual Crisis Network in the UK. And there are spiritual crisis networks all over the world now, raising awareness of and actually doing very real work in National Health Service in the UK to change the paradigm in healthcare, to really recognise the feminine, recognise the spiritual, recognise the mystical. And for the first step, when someone goes in struggling with depression or anxiety that happens to be having also spiritual experiences or mystical experiences, that they're not instantly medicated, pathologized, pulled into the psychiatric system that tells them that every spiritual experience is just a symptom of an illness. So that's something that's really, really, really close to my heart. I think because I saw my mum, my nan, my grandnan really hide in the spiritual closet and the pain that caused, you know. And a client of mine, a beloved friend and client of mine, sadly took her life as a result. You know, I'd been working with her for a couple of years and she was doing such beautiful work in India, and she was a very open, clear channel. But like many people in this culture where it's still not entirely conducive to a fully feminine, open, awakened human, she struggled with spiritual crisis and moving in and out of spiritual crisis. When she was in India or when she was in different parts of the world around shamans, wise men, wise women, they would have understood going back in generations. They would have understood that it was a shamanic initiation, that it was the dark night of the soul, that she needed a certain degree of grounding, helping grow the vegetables, dig the earth, massage, cleaning where she was staying. She was doing all of those things. And sometimes ashrams provide that kind of space. But unfortunately, she came back to London, and the people around her sadly just didn't have context in this culture to understand what she was experiencing. And so, of course, doing the thing that they thought was right, she went into a hospital and was told that all of her years of journeying and all these intuitions and the things that were coming through her, that they weren't real. And that she was medicated. She was given medication that shut everything off, switched it all off. And I just remember her calling me from the hospital saying, please tell me that what they're telling me isn't true. They're telling me that none of it was real, that none of spirit is, that none of that is real, that the divine isn't real, that my visions aren't real, that me seeing energies isn't real, that it's all signs of illness. Please tell me that's not true. Please, you know, sobbing down the phone. And that's the last time I heard from her, because she took her life shortly after that. So this wound is real. And it's been very real for me. And I've seen it happen far too many times. And for me, that's one of the deepest ways that the witch wound has manifested in our society, and why actually so many of my clients were terrified to go to their doctor with certain things that they were experiencing. They would come to me instead. Because with me, there was full acceptance, no judgment, because I've been there. I've seen very extreme things and been through very extreme things myself. And so I feel that's a huge part of our role when I talk about Circle and the spaces we provide. It's creating safe spaces for people to explore what happens when your soul starts to step forward and you start to awaken and your gifts start to come online and your power starts to return. It's not like all rainbows and sparkles. It can be very, very challenging and very scary, and you think you're weird, you think you're crazy, you think you're the only one. And so finding someone else that recognizes, validates, and doesn't think you're crazy, in fact honors what you're experiencing, is so needed. It's so needed. That's the medicine, if you like. Yeah. Is that space of love, compassion for the trauma, for the wound, but also for the awakening. those gifts, the return of that voice.
My goodness, I'm speechless. Listening to all of that. Oh my God.
I feel like all the women speaking through me, Yeah. I feel like I've waited a long time to say all of that in one go.
For your friend as well, who took her life, I feel like we can honor her.
Yes.
You are honoring her.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always will.
Speaking of her and about her. And all the other women that have gone before us. That we can feel safe, and that we can choose that for ourselves, to find that safety, connect to that safety within ourselves, because it's so embodied, isn't it, as you've already shared, how this manifests in our body so visibly for you, and maybe so tangibly for others watching this as well. Just to have that circle, that gathering of women to go, oh yeah, I get you. This is how I experience it. It's instantly, found my tribe. And they all gather, which is amazing. So many women and men have gathered for this summit, wanting to hear what all the other speakers, me, what we have to say. Amazing. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can feel it here in my throat.
I'm just going to tuning fork it for a minute. It might be nice for everybody watching as well.
Yes.
For all of our throats. Thank you.
I can feel that energy making its way up to Scotland.
Good. You can say hi to my relatives in Paisley.
Oh, I will. It's just down the road. Everywhere is down the road, really. So, yeah, the tuning fork and the resonance and tuning in and hearing the hum of our ancestors, the wailing of the witches, the singing of our souls. What is it for you when you use your tuning fork? How healing is that for you and for your clients, I think, is my question.
I use it mainly for me at the moment. Yeah, thank you. It's an Om tuning fork, and you can get many tuning forks with different frequencies. So for me, it aligns me instantly to my core frequency, my home, my source energy, let's say. It just centers me. And then I get that lovely feeling through my body, like you do if you swim in a river or walk by the sea, that sort of ionizing, fresh air, shimmery feeling through the body, through my chakras. It's just very clearing and centering.
Yeah. Gorgeous. Wow. And, when you talk of becoming more trauma aware, feeling safe, gathering in circle or whatever shape we want to gather in. All these ways that we can heal, sharing our voice, the resonance, the quality of our voices. It feels to me like, I wrote down here, rites of passage as you were talking, and it feels like these are all rites of passage that we have to step into and feel like we can have the strength and the permission, if we needed to, step into these ways and these rites of passage. Yeah. And I guess my question is, in what other ways do you think we can heal this witch wounding and become more trauma aware in our lives? Just a small question.
Well, yes. How long do we have left?
I've no idea. I don't know. 10, 15 minutes-ish? As long as we need.
No, I'll touch on it. So, I mean, obviously rites of passage, they happen for us all through our lives, whatever sex or gender, in different forms. Births and deaths and marriages and starting your periods and perimenopause and menopause and divorce, health challenges, redundancies, global pandemics. And the message I was getting was just gather, share, gather. Don't try and navigate these things alone, because they used to be spaces for people to gather, specifically for rites of passage. We used to have the medicine women, the shaman, the witch, the midwives, the soul midwives, didn't we? The herbalists, and still do in some parts of the world, and obviously a huge revival and a return of that now. Those are the people who are there to hold space and offer support for people through those rites of passage. Other ways to heal the witch wound and be trauma aware, I think, is to keep returning to a space of stillness and rest, or whatever brings you back to a space of stillness and rest. Not forcing it, because you're supposed to sit there for 20 minutes and meditate, but actually doing things that help your nervous system to regulate and really restore. Because a lot of what we do trying to sort out how we feel is resolved when we regulate the nervous system. And a lot of women's health issues are related to the maternal line and the feminine wound, and the widespread low level and sometimes chronic and acute expressions of trauma in our bodies. The chronic fatigues, the ME, the fibromyalgias, these sorts of very widespread conditions, all of which I've experienced and been diagnosed with over the years. And I've realised after 20 plus years of navigating that journey that for me it was about the feminine wound and how it was manifesting through my body. And how as a woman who kind of came in very feminine in my true nature, well, all of our true nature is deeply, deeply feminine when we're plugged into it. But I came through a line, very openly awake, wounded, but very awake feminine women into a patriarchal world. So I've always struggled. And I realized that my adrenals and my nervous system were just firing in fight and flight constantly. So it was just cycles of exhaustion and then recovery and then exhaustion and then recovery, because I kept going back out into the world that didn't nourish my nervous system. It completely threatened and challenged my nervous system. And that's the case for anyone who's highly sensitive, very intuitive. And just that realization was transformational. Like I mentioned before, that realization, there's not something wrong with me. It's that I'm a fish up a tree. I'm never going to fit in if I'm a fish up a tree. I need to find my ocean. I need to find my fellow fish. So that's what was transformational for me, was realizing that. And then there are any number of beautiful things that can be helpful to nourish the nervous system and help regulate the nervous system. My favorite ones that I do for me, I'm happy to share, that work the best for me. So alternate nostril breathing is fantastic. I mean, you can Google it. it's one of the practices that's been most widely researched in terms of its power to regulate the vagus nerve and the nervous system, and to calm the kind of fight, flight, fawn response. That's something that I use personally. Deep breathing, that box breathing, you know, deep breath in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, pause for 4. That's great. If I have a flare up of complex PTSD or collective trauma type symptoms, which can sometimes feel like anxiety. A lot of people that deal with anxiety, but they can't find a source for it. They're not actually assigning it to something like that they're actually worried about something in the future, but they don't know what else to call it. It's very often an emotional flashback or a dysregulation in the nervous system. And it feels like anxiety, you know, when you feel like you're going to die and your heart's racing and you can't breathe. And a lot of people I've worked with, we've realized that was actually an emotional flashback or a past life flashback in the body, and the witch wound kind of burping itself out of the system, triggered by something maybe they saw on the television, triggered by something. And so, yeah, I'm very careful about researching witch trials and things for myself these days, because I have to keep very aware of when my nervous system gets triggered. It doesn't mean I avoid the healing. It just means I can't heal if I'm in fight or flight mode. I heal best when I'm in rest, digest, calm. And there are amazing teachers all over the world far more equipped to help with healing of cultural and complex trauma. One of my favourite people is Peter Levine. He's written a great book about complex PTSD. And I think that that's central to healing the witch wound, is becoming aware of the impact of, even if you haven't personally been through anything that you think is traumatic, for somebody highly sensitive and intuitive, just living in this world is a background hum of strain and stress on the nervous system and the adrenals. And the more we awaken to things like the witch wound, there's unresolved trauma that comes to the surface about that. And we start to see it. Excuse me, I'm releasing as I'm talking. Yeah, we start to see it more as we become more aware. We start to see it, we start to feel it more. So Peter Levine is great. Lots of resources around him. There's also a practice called trauma release exercises that a couple of my friends do very beautifully. They've had great success with people who've had more obvious traumas from war zones and so on. But it's also been incredibly helpful for people who have this kind of background, complex or cultural trauma. So they might not have had a bereavement, they might not have had a car crash, they might not have had sexual abuse or child abuse, but they're a woman of colour, an Asian woman, a brown woman, you know, or they're somebody from the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, transgender community, this low-level hum of background traumatization. And, you know, the white Western mystical women are just waking up to the witch wound. We're not the first of the party, but we can contribute to the conversation and contribute to the wider healing with our awareness.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. So many ways there that you've gifted to me, to people watching this as well. And when you mention researching the witch trials and doing that, what came to mind for me was knowing our own boundaries, and when we want to go in and when we need to step out, like when you were talking about knowing when to rest and stillness and silence. And
yes. Absolutely. And of course, one of the things that happens with trauma is that we're not connected to our bodies. A lot of us, we evacuate the premises because we want to go home where it's safe, or the realm of the angels where we feel safer. And so for us to know where our boundaries are in terms of what triggers us, we need to be in the body and in the feeling space and to feel safe to feel. So yes, our safety is in ourselves and it is in our bodies, but we need each other to lead us home, to hold space, to help us come back, because otherwise we don't want to come back in, because it's a scary place to feel where all the feelings are, particularly when we're tapping into very deep collective trauma. So it's much more comfortable to stay up and out And these times, if anything else, are calling us to come back and in and ground that light, come back into the body. And then the body becomes the avatar of the soul and can tell you exactly where to go and what it needs, when to stop, when not to go there, you know.
Yeah.
But as a child, I mean, we read The Crucible at school, like I'm sure many people did, learning about the, you know, the witch trials and everything. And my mum openly with me saying she was a white witch. I went straight to the library, showing my age, pre-Yahoo and Google era, you know, went straight to the library, could hardly find anything about it. And then, of course, witch wound information started to come into me intuitively. Couldn't find any information about it anywhere. I could only find little bits of information about the witch trial. So I completely understand the hunger to want to understand more information. And I think it can be empowering as long as we're aware of, like you said, our boundaries and listen to our bodies and start to notice when we start to feel anxious or the throat starts to feel tight or we feel a bit snappy, we're starting to feel a bit irritable or sick in the stomach, nausea, those sorts of feelings. Yeah, and just say, okay, that's triggering a deep memory somewhere. And that's another huge area of research that's fascinating, you know, the epigenetics and how we can inherit trauma down the family line. And of course, that's part of the feminine wound down our maternal line. And conditions like fibromyalgia, for example, I learned recently, are regarded by many people as mitochondrial conditions. And mitochondria is to do with energy generation in the cells, but it also relates to your maternal line.
Wow.
So what is inherited in the maternal line? Gosh. So I just find it so fascinating. That's so all these women manifesting, you know, I say manifesting as in it's showing up, not that they created it. I don't want to get into that conversation, but women experiencing fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and these sorts of, even undiagnosed, they're just struggling on. It's fascinating to me and incredibly empowering, actually, to realize that that's linked to the feminine wound that we're all being called to heal. And a lot of it, I think, is going to unravel and resolve and heal as this wider shift happens, on this wider global shift happens and patriarchy topples, and there will be a shift and a change. And many women who've been struggling for a long time, or feeling unseen, unheard, or feel like they're hiding in the spiritual closet or selling their soul in a job they hate when they know that their calling is to do something else. I feel an excitement and I feel this golden glow around the future for us, them, all of us, that the climate will be more conducive to us being our natural selves more fully.
Yeah.
I've actually got a little, talking about poetry, I've got a little tiny short thing I'd like to read, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
It's more of a sort of a short kind of invocation, really, very short, but it's called Together We Rise. my mug in honor of your summit.
Love it already.
Okay, together we rise. She wears a cloak, but no longer hides, feeling the call from deep down inside. Sounds of her soul arrive in the peace. Gather the women, those ripe to release, with fire in their blood, wounds ready to heal, blazing on their own terms, a new world to reveal. Together we birth a world of the true, midwives and sisters, ancient and new. Voices unheard now blast holes in the skies. Our power returning, together we rise.
Wow. Oh, I could feel.
Full body chills.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure.
Wow. I can feel that golden glow of the future and creating a world that is fully conducive to us, to being feminine, for all genders, to be in balance with our masculine and feminine energies, and co-create this world that is more conducive to us, our intuition, our powers, healing with every step.
Yes, and all of our feminine power, sexual power, our voice, our creative power, our intuitive power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, thank you. That was perfect. That was beautiful. Space you created. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you too. And yeah, I'll put links. Do you want to share where people can find you? And maybe the link to the Spiritual Crisis Centre as well might be useful for people in the UK.
Well, you can please Google Spiritual Crisis Network UK. Yeah. And then if you look up Spiritual Emergence Network, SEN they are known as, but Spiritual Emergence Network has a website that actually links to all kind of spiritual crisis, spiritual emergency support all over the world. So yeah. But you can find me at healingthewitchroom.co.uk.
How we connected.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So healingthewitchwound.co.uk.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. Which explains why the domain I could buy was .uk. Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
But we found each other in the end. That's the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There were 2 letters between us.
Co as well.
Go. Oh, like it. Oh, well, thank you so much, Kimberly. It's been just so powerful to speak with you. All that you've shared, your poem and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, and love to you and the women.
Absolutely.
Men too, I'm not excluding you.
And men, yeah, there are men here in this, in this summit. Thank you.